Ukraine. Instead, we're going to start tonight in Canada. It is very much the Santa Claus of countries in that it's jolly, northern, and absolutely filled with reindeer jizz. Oh, we're fucking back. Over the last few weeks, Canada's capital has had its downtown besieged by protesters.
Ottawa becomes a global front line of frustration over vaccine restrictions. Hundreds of trucks are blockading the area around Parliament.
We're sitting here just because we think we're doing the right thing here.
OK, here's the thing about that. Sometimes sitting in your car is doing the right thing, like if you're waiting for your McFlurry, or dropping off your kid's baseball glove, or screaming in a Trader Joe's parking lot because that was supposed to be your 1 hour alone and you had to spend it going to get that fucking glove, even though you asked Brendan 3 times if you had it before you left the house, and if you don't just sit here for a minute, you might do a murder. And look, I will say broadly, there's nothing wrong with civil disobedience. It's often the most powerful way to bring about change. But occupying a capital city for nearly a month over objections to vaccine mandates for truckers, especially when both the Canadian Trucking Alliance and Ontario Trucking Association have disavowed the protest and roughly 90% of truck drivers have received their vaccines, feels at best an over-response. And it sure seems like there's more going on here, because the protesters are now demanding an end to all COVID restrictions nationwide and the resignation of Justin Trudeau. And they've been cheered on by US Conservatives, with Fox devoting numerous segments to approving coverage of them, and one of the convoy's leaders, Pat King, being interviewed by Stu Varney. But it is worth noting that some of the organisers of this protest have strong views about issues other than COVID mandates. One of the convoy's de facto spokespeople has been Tamara Leach, who has ties to far-right groups in Canada and has been a leader within the Wexit movement, which I know sounds like the official campaign to have Westies refuse to participate in the National Dog Show after years of being unjustly overlooked. But it actually refers to a Western separatist movement that's called for Canada's prairie provinces to secede. And quick fun side note, Leach also sings with a band called Blind Monday. Would you like to hear them perform? Well, too fucking bad, you're going to. Cool. But I will say this, it is hard to think of a song more thematically appropriate to her cause than Get Down With The Sickness, except for maybe My Heart Will Go On, in that it's both Canadian and also inextricably linked with completely avoidable tragedy. Now, as for Pat King, remember the guy who Fox excitedly interviewed this week, you don't need to look deep into his past to find some pretty inflammatory views.
What there is there's an end game. It's called depopulation of the Caucasian race, or the Anglo-Saxon. And that's what the goal is to depopulate the Anglo-Saxon race. Because they are the ones with the strongest bloodlines. And we'll leave it at that, because then we get into a whole different topic.
Holy shit, there is a lot going on there, not least of which is that you're about to bring the Anglo-Saxon numbers down by at least 1, Pat, if you don't keep your eyes on the fucking road there. But also, let's just acknowledge, strongest bloodline is a remarkably bold claim from a man who looks like someone is slowly poisoning Guy Fieri. Now, in recent days, police have been arresting protesters and clearing blockades, so the protest may actually be winding down. But unfortunately, like COVID in the unvaccinated, some of the ideas behind it are massively infectious. There is talk of a US version of it happening, and copycat protests have already taken place in France, Australia and New Zealand, where they had a novel way of trying to clear the obstruction.
Lines of vehicles rolled into New Zealand's capital city last week, blocking streets near Parliament. Officials in New Zealand using softer tactics to try and get people to move on, playing songs from loudspeakers like You're Beautiful from James Blunt, and music from Disney movies, even Barry Manilow.
Oh, come on, New Zealand. Playing James Blunt and Barry Manilow clearly is not going to cut it here. You're not going to move on people this angry with the actions of a bad wedding DJ. Besides, as we all now know, if you really want to get a crowd to disperse, you don't go with Disney or James Blunt. Take it from me. You go with the only song guaranteed to clear a room, and it's this. Exactly. 100% successful. And now, this.